Alright, let me tell you my story the way I see it, because if there's one thing I have learned, it's that the world will always write its own version unless you speak up, and even then they might ignore you, reinterpret you, or turn you into some kind of symbol they can argue about. I never set out to be that symbol, but somehow global politics, regulators, tech competitors, and the media have converged on me like I'm the focal point of every debate about the future. Technology, wealth, power, free speech, global governance, all of it swirling around me like a hurricane I didn't exactly order, but ended up in anyway. And maybe part of that is because I don't really do things the normal way, or the safe way, or the expected way. I move fast, I take risks, I talk directly to people, and I build things that change industries, sometimes entire geopolitical landscapes. Electric cars that disrupt oil markets, rockets that challenge national space programs, satellites that affect battlefield communications, AI systems that force governments to rethink national strategy, a social platform that turns into the center of a global shouting match about speech and censorship. And when you put all that together, you get what I call the Musk effect, which is basically that the moment I touch something, people stop talking about the thing and start talking about me, because I've become this weird lightning rod in the global conversation, drawing down every bolt from every storm happening in technology and politics. And look, I get it. Power makes people nervous, influence makes them suspicious, and unpredictability makes them anxious. And I happen to be a combination of all three. So now every government wants to regulate the spaces I innovate in. The EV industry, autonomous driving, satellite internet, reusable rockets, AI models, and they're not just regulating the products, they're regulating the idea of someone moving faster than the system is comfortable with. Some people say I push boundaries too hard. Some say I'm the necessary counterforce to bureaucratic inertia. Some think I'm a threat. Others think I'm a catalyst. But almost nobody manages to talk about the work without talking about the politics, and the politics without talking about me, which is honestly surreal, because I started out sleeping under my desk at a startup, not drafting geopolitical grand strategy. But as the companies grew, the stakes grew, and suddenly every decision I make is interpreted like I'm some kind of nation state in human form, with analysts dissecting my tweets, politicians invoking me in speeches, and journalists framing me as hero, villain, disruptor, overlord, genius, fool. Pick any two and you'll find them in the same week. The media narratives move in waves. Some say I'm saving the planet by accelerating sustainable energy. Others say I'm destroying it by enabling new forms of inequality. Some praise Starlink for helping people in disasters or war zones. Others accuse it of giving me too much geopolitical power. Some hail my push for open dialogue online as essential for democracy. Others say it's reckless and destabilizing. And I'm standing in the middle thinking, I just wanted to make the future happen faster. But the moment innovation intersects with global interests, you get politics. And when the politics collide with the media, you get mythology. And when mythology collides with public opinion, you get this bizarre world where people know my name more than they know the details of the technologies themselves. And now competitors aren't just businesses, but governments, alliances, intelligence agencies, international regulators, and other tech giants, all negotiating where the boundaries of influence should be In a world where private companies can launch rockets, deploy communication constellations, shape AI development, and host global speech platforms. So when people ask, why do you always seem to be in the middle of every debate? The real answer is that our era has merged technology with governance, innovation with national strategy, communication with identity, and whoever stands at the frontier becomes the battlefield. And I happen to be one of the people building at the frontier. I didn't choose the role of lightning rod, but I understand it now. When the world is transforming this fast, society looks for someone to absorb the voltage. Someone visible, someone polarizing, someone who embodies the tension between progress and risk. And I guess that's me. Standing here trying to navigate the chaos, trying to keep building solutions while being pulled into narratives I never asked for. Watching global politics, regulation, tech competition, and media storms all converge on one person, and that person is telling you his story right now. Because if I don't tell it, trust me, someone else will. And if you think that a convergence of politics, regulation, competition, and media attention reaches some kind of limit, trust me, it doesn't. It just keeps intensifying. Because once the world decides you represent something bigger than yourself, they stop reacting to what you actually do and start reacting to the idea of you. And that's when things get really strange. Because suddenly every move you make is interpreted as a signal, every silence as a statement, every experiment as a provocation, and I'm watching governments draft laws with me in mind, companies shaping their strategies around countering or aligning with what I might do next, journalists writing stories that treat me as a character in a global drama rather than a person building things with teams of thousands. And the truth is, innovation at scale doesn't exist in a vacuum anymore. It exists inside a world where national interests, public emotions, and narrative ecosystems collide. And my work sits exactly at the fault lines. AI, space, transportation, communication, energy, domains that define the 21st century. Domains where nations compete or cooperate depending on the day. Domains where regulation becomes a battleground over who gets to shape the future. And then there's this tension between speed and caution, between pushing boundaries and keeping everyone comfortable. And I've always aligned with speed, not recklessness, but speed. Because slowing down innovation to match bureaucracy is a guaranteed way to lose decades. And losing decades is how humanity misses its big opportunities. But saying that publicly makes me sound confrontational even when I'm just being honest. And then that honesty gets sliced into headlines, reinterpreted, memed, attacked, praised, and weaponized until the original point dissolves into narrative chaos. And that brings me to free speech, another arena where I somehow ended up at the center. Not because I wanted to become the defender of some grand philosophical principle, but because I genuinely believe that open debate is critical for a functioning society, and I also believe that centralized control of information by governments or corporations can be dangerous to long-term freedom. But once you take that stance, you get pulled into the global ideological battlefield, whether you like it or not. And suddenly, you're accused of everything from destroying democracy to saving it, depending on who you ask. But here's the part most people don't see. The more the world argues about me, the more it actually reveals its anxieties about change. Fears about automation, mistrust of power, uncertainty about AI, worry about inequality, anger at institutions, nostalgia for simplicity, and an enormous pressure to find someone, anyone, to either blame or rally around. And I guess my visibility makes me an easy candidate for both. But while all that noise is happening, my teams and I keep working on the actual problems. Building rockets that can take humanity to Mars, scaling batteries to stabilize renewable energy grids, pushing AI to be safer and more aligned, deploying satellites to keep people connected after disasters, creating electric vehicles that reduce reliance on fossil fuels, and yet the public conversation somehow fixates on personality instead of mission, conflict instead of innovation, drama instead of progress, until it feels like the world is trying to turn my life into a reality show, even though I'm trying to run engineering companies, not star in some global soap opera. And I'll be honest, sometimes I look around and wonder how we reached a point where a kid who used to read sci-fi alone in his room ended up being treated like a geopolitical force field. But then I remind myself, this is what happens when you build things that change the power structure of industries and nations, because power never shifts quietly. It shifts with turbulence, with narrative battles, with political friction, with regulatory tension, with competitors trying to shape the story, with media amplifying every spike in emotion, and all of that converges into the storm I stand in every day. But here's the twist. Being a lightning rod doesn't just attract the strikes. It channels them, grounds them, turns them into energy. And in a way, that's what keeps me going. Because for every controversy, every headline, every political scuffle, there are also breakthroughs, launches, innovations, moments where we prove that humanity can push beyond the limits people assumed were fixed. And if carrying the weight of the global spotlight is the price for accelerating that progress, then it's a price I'm willing to pay, because the story isn't about the noise around me. It's about the future we're building. And I'm gonna keep telling that story, whether the world cheers, boos, or argues about every sentence.